Hello and welcome to another virtual Virtuoso with the Cheyenne Symphony Orchestra. I'm William Intriligator, music director and conductor. And joining me tonight is Evan DeLong, our acting principal violin one of our titled first violins in the orchestra. Welcome, Evan.
Thank you.
It's great to have you here. You're a relatively new member of the Cheyenne Symphony Orchestra. You joined us, I guess it was in the, was it the 2019-20 season was your first season, right?
Yeah.
And of course, that season had to get cut short because of the pandemic. Well, tell us a little bit more about you. Where are you from originally? Where are you living now? All those great questions.
Yeah, so I was born in Southern California, which my family currently lives. So in the LA area is where I live, or my parents live right now. And then for about 5 years, I moved to South Bend, Indiana from age 7 to 12 while my mom was getting her PhD at Notre Dame. Then went back to California, which is where I lived until I went to school. So I did my undergraduate at Indiana University. And then took a couple years off, did some different things, and then I just started my master's at the University of Denver this past year, so 2019.
Oh, so you're currently a master's student.
Yeah, so I
That's
just started
great.
my second year actually. Yesterday was the first day of classes.
Oh my goodness, wow. How's it going with like virtual learning? And I'm imagining that most of your classes are not in person, huh?
Well, so we actually did an entire, because we're on the quarter system. So the spring quarter started right at the start of the pandemic. So that entire quarter was online. But this fall, they're working to make everything sort of a combination. So things like lessons they're trying to do in person. They're doing a string orchestra, socially distanced.
Oh, good.
Most academic classes will be online. I do have one that's actually in person. So it kind of depends on what the teacher wants to do. And then also the students had the option of whether they wanted to come in person or do things virtually.
Sure.
So I chose to do things in person, but most things will be online.
Right.
Yeah.
So then when you auditioned for the Cheyenne Symphony Orchestra in the fall of 2019, you were like fresh in the Front Range region. Is that right?
Yeah, I just been there maybe a month and a half.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how are you finding it living in this part of the country?
It's been great so far. I love Denver because it has that kind of big city feel, but it's so close to the mountains and it's easy to go hiking, which I love to do.
Mm-hmm.
And skiing, which I also love to ski.
Oh, me too. Yeah.
So yeah, and I mean the weather is just absolutely gorgeous. I love how it's sunny all the time, and I kind of honestly enjoy the unpredictability of the weather as well.
Well, you definitely had unpredictability. Was it last week when you went from 90s down to snow the next day or something?
Yeah.
Crazy. So I don't know if you knew this, but I'm also from Southern California. I was born and raised in Santa Monica.
Oh, my family actually lives in Malibu right now. So
oh, that's so funny. Wow, you're from the Boo. That's great. Wow, that's so neat. You tell us a little bit about like why music and how you got really into that.
Well, so I started like my kind of training in music before my family moved to Indiana. So around age 6, I started taking piano lessons, but I just don't think I like to practice piano for some reason. So then when we moved to South Bend, they had a really great like arts community, had a great symphony there that put on performances. So I went to it was like a string quintet performance at a library. Then my dad took my sister and I to, and I think that's the first time I really heard like string instruments live. And for some reason I was drawn to the violin, which I don't know why as a 7-year-old that was, but I was definitely interested in that. And so I expressed interest to my parents at that point, and I think they were a little nervous just because at the time they were living in a 500 square foot apartment with the four of us, and this thought of a 7-year-old like scratching out a tiny violin was probably not super ideal. So I ended up asking my grandma to get me one for Christmas, and she did.
Oh, wow.
And so then my parents got me lessons at the local Suzuki school there, which was a really great program. And yeah, and so they've been super supportive ever since. And then when I got back to California, I just started taking more serious private lessons up until I went to school.
That's great. Wonderful. I'm just wondering if, forgive me for asking this personal like question, but I wonder if we went to the same high school. Where did you go to high school?
Well, so actually I was I grew up in Thousand Oaks. My parents moved to Malibu just a couple of years ago.
Sure.
I didn't grow up there. I was actually homeschooled. So,
Really?
but my dad's a teacher at the Oak Park Unified School District, and my mom's a professor at Pepperdine. So they're both educators.
Oh, nice. That's so cool. That is so
Yeah.
neat. And so then you must have continued with piano, because as our friends watching will see in a few moments, you definitely have piano, like very strong piano skills. So tell us about that. Did you do both instruments for a number of years?
Yeah, so once we moved to Indiana, I think maybe around 9 or 10, I started taking piano lessons again. Because I always, I think, just was like enjoyed playing piano just because of the ability to play multiple lines at once, which we don't, well, it's a lot hard to do on the violin. It is possible, but not something we do easily.
Right.
But on the piano, it's just like, and it's great for like, just understanding like music theory and chords. So I think I always just enjoyed the piano, that aspect of the piano. So I started taking lessons. I took lessons through most of high school. Didn't take lessons for the last few years just to focus on violin. But then once I got to IU, I started taking lessons with like a TA there, which was great. And then the secret kind of got out that I played piano, and I started accompanying people on their recitals, and my teacher found out. And then I was playing in studio class and all this stuff. So and I actually really like accompanying violin concertos and violin repertoire because I know the repertoire well, and it kind of gives me a broader sense of the scope of the piece. So actually, definitely. I think I accompanied like the Mendelssohn concerto twice while I was at IU.
Great.
A couple other concertos in studio class, and I actually really enjoyed doing that. So I try to keep it up just because I feel like, down the road when I have students of my own, I can, easily accompany them, and I think it just makes life easier for everybody. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, it's really, really a wonderful skill to have, and it just shows your, wonderful musicianship overall. I mean, that you're a fine violinist, and then you're also a very good pianist too. So, well, people will see for themselves. Tell us a little bit about the first selection that you're going to play for us.
Sure, yeah. So the first piece is by Beethoven. Obviously, we're in the midst of his 250th birthday or something, anniversary.
Yeah.
Beethoven. Yeah. So I figured this would be a great way to kind of celebrate him a little bit. Yeah, so in terms of his violin repertoire, obviously he has the concerto, the 10 violin sonatas, and these 2 romances. I'll be playing the second in F major. And these sort of are unique pieces, I feel like, in both the violin repertoire and in Beethoven's writing in general, just these kind of 2 standalone romances, basically. And originally they're both for violin and orchestra. And I just think that they're both just such gorgeous pieces that show both the melodic and the virtuosic side of the violin. So yeah, this second romance in F major is definitely the most well-known of the 2. And it has this gorgeous melody that comes back several times. And in the middle of that, there's kind of these pretty virtuosic middle sections. There's a pretty dramatic middle part that goes into F minor. And then at the very end of the piece, we sort of go back to the original idea, and then I think the ending is just great. So yeah, so that's what I'll be playing first. And so I decided to, for the first time, try and do this self-collaboration thing where I am also playing the piano part. So basically I recorded the piano part first, really thinking about what I was gonna do in my head, and record the violin part while listening to myself play piano through the headphones. So which turned out to be a lot of fun, also a bit challenging, but it was a fun experience to put that together. So
Absolutely. And I was so impressed that I mean, clearly you had to do, one take of the whole piano thing and just be set with that. And then did it take multiple takes then to put them together, or did you record it the first time when you did your self accompanying? And what was that, trying to lock in? Did you ever feel like constricted by the piano, being recorded first?
yeah, a little bit. I think recording the piano part was a little easier just because I wasn't having to try and be with something, which myself, but it's weird. But yeah, and the piano, I took a couple of takes. Finally got one I was like decently happy with. And then doing the violin part with that. I thought I had a good one, and then I put it together, and then I realized like in the middle I was not locking up right with like the 16 notes in the piano, so then I had to do it again, and with that in mind. Because when you have the two tracks playing together when I was editing it, like if they're not exactly lined up, it sounds really weird.
Okay.
It's a little hard to take like liberties depending on what the piano part is doing. If the piano part's just playing chords, because the accompaniment changes each time that original theme comes back.
Yeah.
So that was a challenge.
And that brings up a whole nother role that you had to play, which was not just pianist and violinist, but also producer and engineer at the same time. Yeah, that's amazing.
So but it was a really fun process. And it was honestly the first time I was even just playing with the accompaniment track in my ear was the first time since March that I've actually had played something with piano. So it actually felt really nice. And in kind of it's kind of a weird experience playing with yourself when you are like dealing with your own like whatever you're doing. So but it was great experience.
And I really love these romances. I've had the opportunity to conduct this one many years ago in Aspen, and it's a beautiful piece. You know what it reminds me also is of the F major sonata, the Spring Sonata. It has some qualities that are like that too. Maybe our listeners will recognize that as well. Anything else you want to share before we cut right into it?
No, I think that about sums it up.
That's great. Well, here is Evan DeLong, pianist, and Evan DeLong, violinist, with Beethoven's Romance No. 2 in F major. Enjoy. Bravo, Evan. Wonderful. It's so great to see this whole other side of you as a pianist. I mean, wow. I'm just really impressed with your musicianship.
Thank you.
And you know, you are in the front lineup of our first violins. You're in a titled spot there, and you're really valuable part of the leadership of the strings. Um, we can hear a little bit of in this next selection that you've chosen for us, a little bit of, you know, the real virtuosity, and why, you know, it at a relatively young age you're in such a great leadership position in our orchestra, and we're lucky to have you. Tell us a little bit about this next piece.
Well, so I'll be playing the 15th of Paganini's 24 Caprices. So these 24 Caprices are sort of, well, they're an extreme staple in the violin repertoire, probably not as important, but almost as important as I would say the sixth solo and sonatas and partitas by Bach. And so Paganini was one of the great virtuoso, I mean, the great, probably ever, violinist of all time. Unfortunately, we don't have any recordings of him playing, but from stories people have told, he was just kind of this, they call him like the devil of the violin, like he just was apparently insanely virtuosic. And so he wrote a lot of pieces, several concertos, some like show pieces for either solo violin or violin piano, and then he wrote these 24 Caprices, which are his most famous works. And each one has a different kinds of technical and all kinds of challenges.
They almost seem like etudes in that sense, like they have a specific kind of virtuosic study involved, but they're very musical at the same time.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't know if you'd agree with that or not.
Oh,
I mean, they're more than etudes for sure.
Yeah, I think they're a step up from etudes in that way. Yeah, like they are intended to challenge the player and to learn new things. And one thing that I have always been told by teachers when I'm studying these works is like, you know, don't get tied up in all the technical stuff, but like really try and like make something out of this, like, and try and make it beautiful, try and, you know, phrase and try and like, which obviously is really hard to do when there's all this other stuff happening. But I think once you get past that and once you start looking at the Caprices in more of a musical sense, all that stuff feels more enjoyable. And I mean, they really are like just great little, like, they're all quite short, 3 to 4 minutes long, and they're kind of like these statements, and they are just, I think, really wonderful. So this particular Caprice I'll be playing, number 15, in E minor. It has the typical of Paganini Caprices to kind of have two distinct sections and then go back to the first section, so kind of an ABA form, easy to follow. So the first section is in the E minor, the home key. Kind of have this main theme that's introduced in octaves, and then after that, the main theme is introduced, well, it's kind of a variation, sort of octaves, an octave higher with other notes in between, with like this kind of arpeggiating thing happening with the bow. So kind of, as in typical Paganini style, introduce something, then make it twice as hard, or 4 times as hard in this case.
You're right. And you're in a pretty high register there. I mean, that is, I don't even know what position that is in when you're at that point.
So then the second section is completely different. It goes to so it goes to G major. And so this has a lot of up bow staccato, where basically you're moving the bow in this sort of like, so short notes, but they're all in the same bow, basically, going up bow. So they have these scales, and then immediately like these arpeggios going way to the top, and then you have about, I think, I want to say 15 in a row of these like up bow staccatos. So it's a lot of, like, he's clearly like up bow staccato is the key thing in this section. So I think, and for my own personal preparation in this Caprice, the challenge, I think in any Caprice, is once you have done the work, the challenge then is to just play through it without stopping, because it's easy to just get like exhausted when you have all these things happening. You really don't have any break, and there's no pianist to kind of back you up.
Yeah.
So I think, it just trying to find places where you can just sort of like release everything, and then before you do something crazy, you just sort of like relax, and then so I think once you do all the work, find the time to, or the space really, just to breathe and make music.
Right.
Yeah.
I liked it when you called them, the Caprices in general, like statements, because like they have a sense to me like they're different personalities, or they're different stories or something. Like he's trying to capture like a certain type of story or a certain type of mood or something. And I thought I had the pleasure of hearing your recording before we talked about it today, and you definitely capture that. It's almost as if like he's from a time when they were doing like magic shows, and like he's creating this sense of mystery, and like you said, like people thought he was like possessed by the devil because of how incredible virtuosic he was when he would play the violin, Paganini. And then these are pieces that he wrote for himself to play, and they definitely have that quality of like mesmerizing the audience. Yeah. That's so cool. Well, anything else you want to share before we go right into it?
No, that's about it.
All right, Evan DeLong, Paganini's, you're fine. Paganini's 15th Caprice. Enjoy. Bravo, Evan. Fantastic. Bravo. We're so lucky to have musicians such as you, so talented in the Cheyenne Symphony Orchestra. And Even though you're a relatively newer member of the orchestra, we hope that you'll be with us for a while. Tell us a little bit about what your aspirations are with music, and where do you see yourself?
I love orchestral playing. That's definitely one of my passions, but I also like and really enjoy other things, teaching chamber music. So ultimately, I'd love to have a position in like a full-time orchestra somewhere, also doing teaching and some kind of chamber music on the side. But I also really like the kind of freelance aspect of performing, and I kind of like going different places and performing with different ensembles. That's something, and that's sort of what I'm doing right now as I'm in grad school and what I've been doing for the last few years, and I've really been enjoying it.
That's great. Do you play in other orchestras in the Front Range area? You must probably perform at the university, of course, in Denver, but like other non-school orchestras?
Yeah, so I'm a member of the Fort Collins Symphony.
Oh, great.
And then those are, so in Colorado, these are the only two orchestras I am a member of. I also have subbed with Greeley Philharmonic. I've also subbed with the Boulder Phil. And then I'm also a regular sub with the Santa Barbara Symphony in California. So before COVID started, I would actually fly back to California to play with them.
That's great.
Fortunately, that's not happening anymore.
Yeah.
And then one other thing with chamber music that I have also been a part of was this program called Lincoln Center Stage, which is a partnership between Lincoln Center and Holland America Cruise Line. So this summer before I moved to Colorado, actually, so right before literally right before I started school, I did a 4.5 month long contract on a Holland America Line cruise ship with Lincoln Center Stage, where I was basically performing with this piano quartet or piano quintet for 4 months on this cruise ship, and we were doing like nightly chamber music concerts for basically a full audience every night, and it was sort of the venue on the ship was modeled to look like Alice Tilly Hall at Lincoln Center.
Wow, you're kidding!
All kinds of repertoire, and so that's actually something I was hoping to do kind of right away after, again, once my master's ends, but I really don't know whenever that is going to happen, because I feel like it's the last thing that's going to come back. But I'm really glad I had the opportunity to do that before this all started, and I had an absolutely amazing time doing that.
I bet. Did you get to play like real repertoire too with the piano quintet?
Oh yeah, we were performing like the Brahms piano quintet, the Schumann piano quintet, Shostakovich piano quintet.
Wow.
And then we were also doing, sometimes we would do things in smaller ensembles. So I was playing like the Debussy sonata.
Oh, nice.
And we also did a lot of like crossover stuff. So we had a program that was all like these arrangements of movie music. We had one that was arrangements of like pop standards, and they were all really, really good arrangements that the Lincoln Center, this program had arranged specifically for these concerts. So they were actually really, really high quality.
That's so great.
Yeah.
And what cities did you get to, or ports did you get to visit?
Oh, I mean, I can't tell you all of them. I mean, it was so many, because the contract I had was in Northern Europe. Oh. So we started all of our cruises from the Netherlands, Rotterdam, and then Amsterdam. And then we were doing cruises in Norway for a while. So I think we went to like up to like about 20 different ports in Norway.
Wow.
We were doing like 5 or 6 different spots in Iceland. We went to 3 ports in Greenland. We were going all over like UK, so we were in Scotland, England, Ireland.
Oh my gosh, I'm so jealous. That sounds amazing.
St. Petersburg, Helsinki, Stockholm.
Wow.
There was a lot of places. And basically, because of our schedule, we were just performing concerts in the evening once the ship had left the port. So we basically had all day to explore. I would often just wake up and go hiking like in Norway right off the ship, because there were hiking trails just right there. So yeah, it was pretty incredible.
That's amazing. Yeah. Wow. What an incredible opportunity. I hope you do get that opportunity again. I know it's hard to imagine the way things are now, but Wow, that is so cool. That reminds me, I was going to ask you, was there some other opportunity or experience that happened to you when you were younger that made you really know that like music and violin was the thing for you? Like, was there something in your high school years or something like that, other than that time that you saw that performance when you were 7, when you chose the violin? Was there something else that made you want to say, I am committed to being a violinist?
Yeah, so I think when I was a early high school, like freshman, sophomore, I was sort of at that point kind of on the fence about whether or not I was going to really pursue a music career, because at that point it's really crucial to kind of know, because then a couple years down the road you have to start planning for your undergrad auditions, which is a big process. So the summer after my sophomore year, I went to the Interlochen Arts Camp, which was that was my big kind of turning point, I think, because it was the first time that I was in a place with all these other people that were wanting to do the exact same thing. And we were, performing in the orchestra every week, preparing different programs every week. It was the first time doing anything like that. We, had chamber groups, and just kind of the atmosphere was this, like, everybody was there because they loved music. Yeah. And so I think that was a big turning point for me. And after that summer, I think I felt really like definitely this is what I want to do.
That's so great. Wow. We have that in common too, Evan, because I went there for 3 summers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Wow, that's so wonderful. Well, we're very fortunate to have you in the Cheyenne Symphony, and thank you for sharing your music making with us tonight, and for all of our fans watching on Virtuoso.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Well, we can't wait to get back together and be performing again in person, and I'm hoping that you'll be part of our concert October 17th, where we really get to feature our strings. And on behalf of all of us at the Cheyenne Symphony Orchestra, thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Evan, so much for your beautiful music today and for having this opportunity to get to know you better.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and to everybody out there, stay healthy, stay safe, and hopefully we'll see you at our concerts or live streaming our concert events. And be well. Take care.